All right, welcome back to the AM show. Time for us to get into AI, artificial intelligence, and things that are happening around it. Now, the Pan-African AI Innovation Summit is happening in Ghana, and I've been joined in the studio by one of the speakers, Paul Crafer, for Human Certified Auditor. He is a VP in charge of services at EMEA at Assessed Intelligence. Okay. EMEA is Europe, Middle East, and Africa. So that's it there. Crafer, good morning to you, Paul.
Good morning. Good morning. Pleasure to be here. Thank you so much.
Great to have you here. Now, why is the summit happening again?
It was a great first year. Over 1,000 people attended, either virtually or in person. It really kind of set a standard for what do model providers, what do deployers, what do developers, what do government, youth, all the different actors, what do they expect from AI in an African setting? And then building on that, it's now about bringing those different actors again together to work out how do we now push the agenda forward. That's not just an agenda for private industry, it's also an agenda for everybody in the ecosystem. So I think you're going to see youth, developers, investors, government, policymakers, private sector of all different types coming together. From what I've heard, there's already over 600 people confirmed to attend.
Okay.
So it's really just a kind of a next step in understanding how do we bring AI into a larger sphere within Africa, and how do we really make it stick, but how do we make it secure and safe as well?
I mean, what happened last year, between last year and now? What has changed?
What's the journey?
What has changed?
Well, if you consider last year was, I'm not going to say it was a kind of a starting point, because people have been working with AI in different settings and different use cases within Africa for, getting on for almost a decade, but a lot of that was kind of research driven. So what we're seeing is more of a drive within the private sector. Now, admittedly, that's kind of being driven by companies that are not African, but still now there's an understanding, okay, we can create, deploy, innovate and diffuse through the African continent ourselves. So last year was about, okay, how do we set a national agenda, perhaps for Ghana? The Minister of Communications was there last year. He talked about the data harmonization bill. Now we're sitting here today, one day before the government launches the national AI strategy tomorrow here in Ankrah. So when all of these ecosystem players come together, they push the agenda forward. And we've seen that from last year. Now this year, what is the new agenda? The agenda is youth and empowerment. The agenda is bringing people together to find opportunities to maximize the benefits of AI. And I think that's the change in the narrative. It's taking it from, okay, what can we do with AI? Now let's really do it, and let's bring the youth in to support that. Because of course, Africa has such a young population.
But I mean, do you see Africa as, adopting this AI at the same rate as, say, Europe is doing?
That's a really loaded, nuanced question, right? I mean, if you look at critical industries like we do at Assessed Intelligence, high stakes environments where the risk of something going wrong has high societal impact, talking healthcare, talking critical infrastructure, then the adoption within the African continent is not as fast, perhaps, as in Europe and the US, right? Because there's not the capital flowing into the infrastructure. But what we are seeing is we're seeing a real drive for specific use cases that you wouldn't find necessarily within places like Europe or the US, because they are so contextualized to Africa. Developments within agri-tech, health tech, building low resource language models and even small language models to work on edge devices. This is the kind of thing that people don't really do in Europe. And okay, that's a generalization, but this is the kind of thing that people aren't necessarily thinking about, because they're just taking big frontier models and building systems without really thinking about, okay, how can we adopt and adapt new types of technology? So I think here in Africa, you're going to see more of these smaller models coming through into specific use cases. So, like I said, it's a nuanced question. It really is.
All of that, but
sure.
We'll talk about it later. Let me bring in Reginald Ankrah. He's building trustworthy AI in Africa and data AI consultant with Accenture in UK. Is that it, Reginald? Did I mention the company well? Okay, maybe you might have to unmute for me. Okay, great. Okay. Reginald, I mean, this happened last year. You were there. You were a speaker there. Between then and now, are we moving from curiosity to execution, or we are still being curious as we were last year?
So decisively, I would say yes, we are. Because last year, the big question on our stages was, can Africa even participate in AI? This year, the question is completely different. It's what does Africa actually build and who owns it? So for me, there are three things that tells me that we're moving from curiosity to execution. The first one being that a year ago, Ghana had no national AI policy. Today we have one that is actually aiming to make us the AI hub for West Africa by 2023. The second one for me is that money and potential investments are real now, and we see it on the ground. MTN has put about $2 million into training 1 million young coders. And then there's $250 million AI commitment that is currently in hand, and then $1 billion partnership with UAE. And the third for me, and this one is the most important one, is that the language has now changed from, we used to say adoption, now we're saying sovereignty. So this shifts everything. We're no longer asking for a seat at the table, we're building our own. So yes, I can confidently say that we're moving from curiosity to execution at the CS Summit.
I mean, looking at the African context, and if you look at our population, in fact, if we're moving to execution, it has to do with the number of, the part of the population we're also moving with the trend. Are we saying that Africans are really tapping into this such that we are indeed sure of this execution that we are moving into?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, you see, we have such a massive youthful population who are already tapping into the useful use of AI. So a lot of people are using ChatGPT models, Claude models, and a whole host of other things. The problem I see is that we don't have the structures in place to actually allow our youth to actually build these solutions and help us to execute it at our scale. So being able to bring all the major players into the same room and being able to create the platform that offers the youth the ability to gain the right skills, gain the right infrastructure to actually build would really drive our execution. So in terms of our capacity, we do have it. What we need is the rails to help us to move forward.
There's also the trust issues, right? For example, people believe that, well, there's something negative that we're not seeing. How is that manifesting on the African continent, for example, the trust gap?
So I think before I can answer that, I would just need to make a point or a reference to the global experience overall. Okay. And the most common trust question that comes up when it comes to trust gap is, can I trust what the model is telling me? If we then bring that to Africa, it goes deeper than that surface level about what can I trust what the model is telling me. It rather starts with the data itself, right? Because most AI systems are trained on data that does not represent us. For example, a US Homeland Security facial recognition has about 49% accuracy when it comes to processing data on blackmails. And it's a direct consequence of the absence of African data sets in global AI training pipelines. Now, if you think about it, that's actually worse than flipping a coin, right? Now, imagine that same error rate running in a loan decision engine in Ankrah, or a triage tool at Kolebu, or hiring a filter at a bank. And that is not a technology problem. That is a structural exclusion coded into our software. So the rest of the world is debating about trust on screen. We need to fight it at the training level and at data level, because if the model is foreign, chances are bias is already built into the app before an African user ever opens it. So to be able to plug that trust gap, we need to be able to start looking at how we actually train our own models using African data to actually build that trust overall.
Is that happening anyway? Are we creating our own based on our own models?
Absolutely, absolutely, we are. I can make reference to my own, where we've actually built a clinical AI solution, and WHO has actually reached out to us to try and help us trial it in Africa. And this has been built on our data with our people and our cultural context and local context embedded in that solution. So many like myself, I know, are already doing that. So yes, we are doing that. What we need is, as I said, the guardrails and the support to help drive us. So yes, we are working to build and plug in that trust gap.
All right, Paul, for you, how does the maturity of AI assurance, in Europe compared to what you're seeing in Africa?
Sure. Absolutely, there is a maturity in assurance in Europe. It's being a little bit held back by the kind of the slow dragging of the EU AI Act, but the structures and the processes and the companies, the certifications, the standards, they're pretty much all in place. Right, so you can go to, if you look on the database for notified bodies who can actually certify against what it currently exists from a standards perspective, the EU AI Act, it's like 10 companies. When the standards are finished for the EU AI Act, and there's an organization called Senelec working on that, and they are slightly delayed, to be honest, then there'll be a lot more notified bodies that are accredited to do certifications. Therefore, they do the audits. They give it a rubber stamp and they say, this is approved, this is not approved. So that level of maturity certainly is existing in Europe and to a lesser degree in the US because, of course, the regulations don't mandate it.
I'll let you continue, but if that level of maturity is there in Europe, but you mentioned EU,
the EU AI Act
is dragging its feet in getting it done.
Yeah.
Then if they that we expect to even know better than that are dragging their feet, how much more would the African context be?
Well, I think that's where it's a very exciting time, and one of the reasons why I enjoy spending so much time in Africa and working with African developers. And currently I'm teaching at MEST Africa, just as Reginald did just recently, working with these young startups and these entrepreneurs. The potential for leapfrogging the other continents around the world is enormous in Africa, because you're not starting from a kind of a legacy situation where you've got all of these old ERP systems and these old business legacy systems. In Africa, people can go straight into AI. I heard Reginald describe it just recently as start with a kind of a native AI approach, and that's really powerful.
Okay.
And Africa has done that before. They did it with mobile phones, they've done it with mobile money. They've gone straight into the latest technology and made it successful.
Okay.
So the other thing that's really powerful is if you look at the new emerging technologies bill here in Ghana, it specifies auditing twice a year.
Okay.
If you look at the data protection law in the UAE, under the DIFC, that's the Dubai International Financial Center, they specify auditing once every 3 years. So clearly there is an understanding that in order to keep these things safe for people, for the use cases to be applicable, for the safety, the security, the trustworthiness of these AI systems, you need to be looking at them and you need to be monitoring them. And clearly the Ghanaian government recognizes that and has mandated those audits. And that's really exciting because there's very few acts around the world that say this needs to be checked every year or every 2 years or even twice a year.
All right, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Let me bring in Reginald now. Reginald, so why should I attend the summit, for example, before we wrap up?
Well, so last year, we had a lot of panel discussions. We brought lots of people to the table and we had those conversations. This year, what happens is that for the next 10 years, Africa AI would be decided by who is actually showing up in that room. We're bringing together policy, capital, and code, all coming together over that 2 years. So you are either helping write the rules or you're going to be operating under the rules that someone else wrote. And so for us, I'd rather Ghana write its own rules. So that means everyone coming so that we can bring the best mind to the table where we can then start writing rules that applies to our people with our context, with our local. Basically, you'd want to think about a grandmother in a very remote village being able to still use AI without necessarily understanding the complexities of it. And I've always said, if AI is not used for good, we would just widen the inequality gap. And by coming together as a nation, we're bringing our best minds to bear, and we're trying to build a solution that actually caters to us as a society, as a country, and as a continent.
Okay, all right. I'm grateful to you. For you, Paul, let's wrap up. Which month is this summit happening?
It's in September.
September.
22nd, 23rd, at the Kempinski Hotel.
Okay. Now, if you could leave the audience with one reason why they must be at Kempinski, witness the unveiling of Ankrah mandate, what will it be?
Reginald said it beautifully. If you're not there, you're not going to be part of the discussion. And you're going to see at this, you're going to see the youth being empowered to find the opportunities that will develop them. You will see the developers that are there to connect with the capital to realize those startups. You're going to see policymakers at this event who are going to be looking for the insights from the practitioners, the researchers, the experts like myself to kind of guide their next steps. Okay. And we're going to be looking at developers who are going to be seeing new use cases. So it's moving the agenda forward, and we're all doing it together.
Thank you very much. Paul Crafer, Vice President Services for Europe, Middle East and Africa at Assessed Intelligence. Or Reginald Ankrah joined us. He is building trustworthy AI in Africa, data AI consultant with Accenture in UK. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks for
the AM show. We'll put a break here. We'll be back with more. Stay.